welcome back to the class, everyone. Today we have another roster building video. This one is going to be a little bit different than the last ones. As of recently, we've been doing a lot of roster building in regards to teams, and while those are really cool and I stand by them for the most part, teams can take weeks or even months to build. So what I want to look at today is more specifically going to be talking about units, like actual individual characters that can be brought up either for remotely cheap or just rather quickly. And the whole point of this is going to be focusing really heavily on long-term and short-term value at the same time. We all know that long-term value Galactic Legends are the best thing ever, and even below the Galactic Legends, those are pretty obvious as well, like Starkiller or Grand Inquisitor or Malgus or something of the sort. That being said, what are the characters that are fairly accessible that can also help you now, but are also going to help you, 3 or 4 years from now, assuming the game will still be around by then? So that is what we're going to talk about today, and we have them labeled out in a few different ways. We're going to go into detail specifying why they meet this criteria, why they're so good, and why you should have them built into your farming plan at some point in time. So first up, we're going to be talking about I call them all-in-ones, and really the whole point of what they do is that they can, number one, do it really well, and that is kind of pre-taunt and consistently taunt, but on top of that, everything that needs to happen in their kit, they can do themselves. So let's talk about this specifically with L3. Love L3. She is good in some generic droid and or scoundrel teams, but at the end of the day, she can be put in like any single team. If you, again, going through her kit, she has stacking max health, which really isn't like contingent on any specific lead or any specific other character being in her team, because if you go to her uniques, she has a way to become prepared on her own, and then on top of it, with her self-modification, she can just become really stinking tanky. She gets 25% extra protection, she gets counter chance, she gets critical avoidance as well as defense. So there's just all these things in her kit that she's doing. You don't necessarily have to have her in a dash team or in a sortie team or in a raid team or anything like that. She can be used in all those, in fact, to great effect, but she can be moved around to other teams that just have also just nothing to do with droid or scoundrel. My personal favorite one that I'm thinking about right now, given we're in 3v3, is actually using her with Jedi Knight Luke and Hoda to counter Darth Revan teams. How that team works is she is going to be taunting at the very beginning. Darth Revan will have to hit her, and since Jedi Knight Luke is immune to fear, only she gets feared, and then Jedi Knight Luke and Hoda can just run the rest of the team. It's really great counter, and that's just one example of one of the things that she can do. In fact, the whole reason why she's R5 right now, and rather GBA is R5 right now for this too, is because I want to be able to use them in any team that happens to have a good Datacron somewhere along the way. And Datacrons are kind of a pain in the butt. Like, you have to be R5 to be able to ride this ride. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I specifically took her up there. She's a good relic in general as a tank. She wants to be able to actually take the hits rather than just die. But that being said, she does get this really added bonus of being able to use, again, with any single team that I want to use with a Datacron. This was one of my favorite uses, was actually when Darth Vader had a really good Datacron. She could stand by to protect him because she was able to take the hits. And then again, not only take the hits in the beginning because she's pre-taunting, but as a consistent taunt. And really, the one who has a better consistent taunt is actually going to be Geonosian Brute Alpha. Brute Alpha is just amazing because he bypasses so many really annoying mechanics. And the reason why is because his tank is actually the brute that he's summoning, and every single time this brute uses its basic ability, it's going to gain taunt for 1 turn. And it gets called in every single time GBA. So anytime it takes a turn, it counters, or GBA takes a turn, you're constantly getting that taunt back. And when we were talking about bypassing certain mechanics, this totally bypasses anti-revives. It doesn't matter what you're facing, if it's gas or if it's SLKR or whatever. If they kill the brute, because it's technically a summon and not a revive, it can just be brought back again and again and again. And going back to kind of the concept that we talked about L3, GBA is going to be able to sustain himself on really whatever team he's on. He is not dependent on having a specific lead or specific ally or anything of the sort, because he not only does he summon this brute, but then he's actually going to go in and share stats with it. So you have this equalization that's happening back and forth between the two. It's really a 2-for-1 type of deal. Very good character overall. And again, he can be used very well on a Geonosian team or just a generic Dark Side team like Under C to be able to tank those hits, or even SLKR so you can get him a certain mechanic going so that you have armor, being able to get Beskar at SLKR. But it's just good all around. He's good in the very beginning of the game with Geos to be able to get Watt. As you move into the mid game, it can be used as well to clean up a lot of things. Defensively isn't that bad. There are definitely a lot of counters, but I really think his big focus when you get to the end of the game is going to be pre-taunting for whatever random character that you really need protected that either has good Datacron or the character just wants it in general, like Jedi Knight Luke. So those are the all-in-ones. Next up are going to be the Nurse Boys, and this one, there are a few other characters that actually fit this criterion. We should probably make a much larger video talking about teams, or rather characters, that are good in the beginning, the mid, and the end game. But I think really the pinnacle of those characters, again, that are accessible, obviously, you know, Galactic Legends or Jedi Knight Luke or Maul or other characters of that caliber are going to be good everywhere, but they're a little bit harder to obtain. IG and Quill, they did come out post Kyrotex, but we recently learned through the comment section, so shout out to you guys, that they don't actually require Kyro all the way up until Gear 12, and they're now both accelerated farms, and they're also needed for Beskar Mando. So there are characters that you're going to build up in some fashion, but I would really push people to take them at least to Gear 12, just so they can get the full benefit of this concept of them always being good. In the very beginning, you're probably going to use them under maybe a Kira or a BAM lead to be able to get things going. The kits overall, different from L3 and GBA, they kind of do need each other to function. There is some viability on their own separated, but the amount of annoyance that happens when they come together is very high. IG actually makes Quill immune to critical hits, which makes him very hard to kill, which is nice, because one of the things that is going to give Quill viability, like we said in the very beginning, under a BAM team, in the mid game probably with a dash team or something of the sort, and then even in the end game on a raid team, like that's one of the, I'm not even there yet, but at the very, very tippy top of things, people are talking about like one of the best teams on defense right now is Rey with BAM, IG, and Quill, because it's helping in some fashion to time out Starkiller. That being said, one of the big reasons why is because Quill has this leadership. It's not a leadership, it's unique, so it can be used in any squad, but where he's giving 40% of his max health, offense, and potency and protection to all of his other allies until the first time he's being deleted, essentially. So he can be used on a ton of teams. One of the other things that's really cool about him, we don't have him modded super well right now, but his base speed is also high, so this gives him a lot of viability to go first and to use his I Have Spoken ability, which is a super cool name, to give 25% turn meter to all of his droid and scoundrel allies. So again, even outside like the Uber Ray comps or even the Dash comps, you can use them in a BAM team to be able to get things going, or even a Bounty Hunter team, as weird as that sounds. There was once upon a time where he was being used in Django or even Aura teams, where he would be able to go first, pump everyone up because all Bounty Hunters are scoundrels, and then they would get contract and they would snipe someone off. So overall, just great combination of characters. We talked a lot more about Quill than we did IG, but IG also does have the pre-taunting function, and he even has kind of a Traya-esque unique, where he is constantly cleansing debuffs from all droid and scoundrel allies, and then he's actually inflicting a damage over time on the enemy, which does come in handy for BAM, because every single time someone on the enemy team takes damage against BAM, you gain turn meter, and you also get more stacks of Whistling Birds. So overall, very good combo, good in several parts of the game, and you kind of do need to get them to get BAM at some point in the beginning. Next up are going to be our solo artists, and they are going to reflect a little bit on what the last characters were doing, in the sense that they're good, again, in the beginning, the mid, and the end game in different homes. And I think out of the three, this might be a little controversial for our Wampa fans out there, but I think really who takes the cake is going to be Savage. Again, a really accessible character. I believe you get him through arena tokens, which is a really easy way to get a character you don't even have to spend energy on. He doesn't need any Kyrotex all the way up through Gear 12, and he's actually pretty decent at Gear 12 as well. But he just offers a lot to a team. He does like to be on Sith teams. We're seeing a lot of viability with him currently with Traya. At the very end, I'm even hearing of some niche situations where he's actually replacing Watt under the C comp. And then even before all that, he can be used to solo some weaker comps in maybe a lower division. But what I'm interested is, this isn't popular, but I'm pretty sure what you can do in Grand Arena, you can probably just throw him on any real team and have him do his little taunting thing and just be a massive pain in the butt and instantly change a certain number of counters. Maybe not stop the exact one your opponent is going to use, but he might be able to narrow it down, just because he's constantly taunting, he's constantly gaining his health back, he's constantly cleansing. I'm not going to read through his whole kit here because it's really long, but basically he just becomes super annoying, has again a bunch of viability in the beginning, the mid, and the end game with everything that he can do, whether it be on a specific comp like Traya, or whether he's just doing his own thing as a solo artist, killing a CLS team, which is really cool to see as well, just tanking for some random team that wants his help. Next up is going to be Nest, and Nest is probably one of these that ages the poorliest, if that's a word, in the end game. Typically when you get there, what she ends up becoming, she becomes a way you can throw on any random team and instantly CLS and Imperial Troopers can no longer one-shot, at least not without a huge headache of what you have to go through to be able to get her down on there, just because of the way her kit works. If you get her stuck behind her bonus protection by continually hitting her over and over again, where she's gaining 40%, and you're not letting her take a turn because you're either removing turn meter or you're gaining it, she times you out and you lose 20 banners, and now you have to have another team to be able to take her out. But even before that, and actually my favorite place currently to use her is 3v3, and that is soloing things. We're able to kill a lot of cool stuff with her right now. We recently have been doing a lot of things against the Maul teams. We went up against a Padme as well, being able to take them down. I think there was one random Sana team or something like that that we were able to take down recently. That's more specific to 3v3, but still overall really good. And one of the nice things in comparison to Savage and Wampa, she doesn't have a GAC Omicron yet. But basically that means all of her viability, everything that she can do in GAC, she can also do in Territory Wars, or even outside of that. So overall, just a great character. Again, has a lot of that solo functionality in the beginning of the game where there aren't a lot of hard-hitting things to be able to one-shot her. And later on, she moves into more of this category of just making sure that CLS or troopers can't take it. Or really any team that focuses heavily on massive amounts of turn meter. And last but not least, for our solo artist is going to be Wampa. Wampa's amazing. He's the only one that is still being used as a solo artist by myself, at least in 5v5. That being said, that is really his biggest downfall. While Nest and Savage can kind of be used every once in a while in another team to be able to bolster that team up, Wampa is specifically not allowed to do that. I believe it says, yeah, in his GAC Omicron, when Wampa is alone and there are no other active allies he starts to get all these major bonuses, increasing his stats, increasing particularly his tenacity so that he can't be hit with a lot of those detrimental debuffs, assuming they aren't irresistible. He just goes to town. He's able to take out a lot of really high caliber teams, or at least teams that are significantly more expensive than he is as an investment. Iden is kind of my personal favorite. In 3v3, we've been able to take him out, or take out quite a few star killers. The Emperor Palpatine and Mara Jade variant, that is contingent on a few things in modding. He does need good mods to function, but he's able to take out entire teams. I think in the earlier game, he ends up becoming super valuable, specifically against General Grievous, because that's a team that almost everyone ends up building up. And if you don't have time to burn, I think it's 1,000 Kairos on Bad Batch, Wampa's a pretty good solution. I guess you could also do Night Sisters, but Wampa's great. And last but not least are going to be our very stereotypical plug-and-play characters. What do we mean by this for anyone who's unaware? These are characters that you can put in, I want to say, probably 4 out of 5 teams, and the team is going to be instantly better. There are exceptions where these characters do make the team worse, like Gas 501st, for example. You don't want to really break up the 501st synergy by throwing in a random Gideon or Thrawn or Wat Tambor. But basically, everything that they do, while they do need other characters to function well, they don't need synergy with a faction or character or anything like that to actually get going. Thrawn himself has a cleanse that also gives back 40% protection, and it's a turn meter swap. And the really cool thing about a turn meter swap nowadays is there's a lot of teams out there that stop turn meter one way or the other. This whole swap turn meter thing completely ignores that. It is not technically gaining turn meter, you're swapping it, so it bypasses that mechanic entirely, which is very nice. It's actually one of the reasons why C and Armor can beat JMK if you have that lined up correctly. Fracture is just still an amazing mechanic. You get to completely shut down a character, as long as they're not a galactic legend, but it's a very useful thing regardless, as well as just his overall having boost in his kit to be able to keep him from dying instantly, or at least becoming a major pain if you do want to kill him right off the bat. So overall, Thrawn, great character. Next up is going to be Gideon. Gideon kind of is going to mirror this in a way. It's a little weird. He has 3 or 4 specific things he does that just happen to be really good in a lot of comps. Number 1, he can go way ahead of everyone else. He's one of the fastest characters in the game. I realize our modding is a bit unrealistic for most, but that is possible because his base is so stinking high. But he's going to be able to go first, and you're going to be able to reduce the enemy's turn meter and give your own allies 25% turn meter after reducing it. So pretty much you can make any team a 25% turn meter boost. One of my favorite ways to use this is actually with Geonosians. You go before the rest of the team, and Geonosians, they're a pretty good squad, but one of the things they lack is a way to be able to get going immediately. And if you have getting in there, he can kind of charge them up so they can actually start to beat some higher tier teams like Admiral Raddus, as well as Bam. But very good there. His armor shred, just a great tool to have, especially with the amount of armor that are coming around on Datacrons right now. And then even his control the situation. This is really random, but he gives everyone, or rather he gives support characters 100% protection up this doesn't seem that valuable. And then until you remember that Padme is support and 100% protection turns into, I believe, 20 stacks of courage. So if you can use him with Padme in 3v3 or even 5v5, shrink down everyone's turn meter except Padme's, because they can't lose turn meter or gain it, and then they just get 20 stacks of courage and they just get to delete some really cool characters. So overall, very nice. I even forgot about Demoralized, where he just universally slaps away 50% offense, critical chance, and crit damage. It just makes teams way more survivable. So again, he has like these 4 random things that just happen to be good on not every team, but a lot of teams that do enhance them. So definitely makes a lot of things better, similar to Thrawn. And last but not least is Wat Tambor, really the ultimate plug and play, so to speak. And that's ultimately because he has, I don't even know where it is in here, it's probably in his unique. He is able to give out 3 techs that are just really stinking good. He can make any single tank a pre-taunting tank, as long as they have protection. They also get to recover protection and get their debuffs off them as well. This is really nice for a lot of Galactic Legends. It's currently being used with both SLKR and C. Might be used with something else later on. He also is able to give back 5% health and protection to to a specific ally, and he gives a tech that is currently able to kill characters without them being able to be revived and give 15% turn meter on top of it. So pretty much you can put him on any random squad in 5v5. He can help their tank, you can help their support, and you can even help one of their attackers. There are a lot of practical uses for this, and really, Wat Tambor is one of the characters when we talk about being able to duplicate characters, if that was a thing, he would be pretty high up on the list. So those are kind of our most valuable characters, especially on a budget, because some of them, or most of them, are fairly accessible. I realize we do have legendaries and Omicrons in here, but at the end of the day, they shouldn't take you months entirely to farm, except Wat Tambor. So that being said, let us know what you guys think. What characters do we miss? Let me know if you guys would be interested in hearing more characters like Kuiil and IG, who aren't necessarily universally good in every team, but do kind of team hop, if that makes sense, from team to team, whether it be in the beginning, mid, or end game. But until the next time, guys, stay awesome.